The recording has begun. Okay, so let us welcome back everyone. This is part two of our discussion on the topic what actually happened on May 3rd May 2023. We have so far already covered the incidents that took place, the number of people killed on 3rd May, and our professor here has clarified that on 3rd May, it was only one Meitei died, 18 cookies were killed, and all of the deaths happened in Imphal. It did not happen in Churachandpur, it did not happen in any of the Kuki inhabited areas. All the killings and all the deaths happened in the Meitei dominated capital, Imphal. So that gives you an idea of who actually were behind the escalation of violence and who actually wanted the situation to get out of control. So now we'll continue. We'll move on to our second question. Or Professor, you can take the mic if you think there's
Yeah,
more.
one other thing we should cover is that the reason, or at least one of the reasons why Meiteis were so angry on that day is that misinformation had been generated.
No,
So there was
the
one
rape
very
rumors.
prominent there
Sorry.
was one very prominent misinformation which said that a Meitei medical student, a nursing student was raped and her dead body was found, and a picture of the dead body covered in plastic was wrapped in plastic was posted on social media. And there were other rumors that said that 40 nursing students had been raped by the cookies. So these were the things that inflamed the Meitei population, right? So there were fact checks that were done. I don't know when exactly, maybe in the following days, saying that these were false. And the picture of the Meitei girl who was supposedly raped was actually somebody who had died in Delhi months earlier, and that was a case of her being killed by her own in-laws.
In-laws or parents?
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so manufactured disinformation was circulated in order to inflame the Meitei public opinion. And despite all the fact checks and debunking that has been done, even till today, there are people who claim that, Meiteis were raped in Churachandpur on 3rd May.
They live in their own little tiny little bubble, right?
Yeah, a dangerous bubble. It's not proper to call it a bubble.
A trap.
It's a make-believe world of hatred. That's what it is. And that's an important part of what's going on here. It's not an ethnic conflict in the sense that the media have played it, because we also talked about this in our previous session that cookies are an underclass in the Manipur society, or all tribals are an underclass. And Meitei still have these, caste purity kind of ideas. And tribals are still considered like, people, Mina is the term that they have used very often, even on Twitter Spaces, meaning slave. So you're supposed to be slaves. How dare you attack us? How dare you defy us? How dare you protest against us? So that feeling, I think, has been there throughout the conflict and even till today. And that's why slogans are shouted like "kill all cookies" and "throw them out of Manipur." And the misinformation that the government has generated, such as illegal immigrants and refugees and so on and so forth, which keeps circulating again and again. So these feed into that hatred. So cookies are not considered as an equal combatant, equal contestant in the power struggle. They're supposed to be lowly people who should have been, subjugated, and they're not acting like they're subjugated people. That's where the anger comes from. So this was there throughout the conflict, and it was there especially during the first few days when, you know, kill them kind of shouts were shouted by old women, young women, girls, children, everybody, right?
So even without the disinformation and without the disinformation campaign that actually led to escalation in violence and the killings of more cookies in Imphal Valley, even without those campaigns, Meitei society was already primed to structured or designed to hate cookies anyways because of the systems and the values they have in place.
Yes.
And it is also very frustrating for them that tribals who they once considered inferiors now have the can now clear exams, UPSC exams, can now live in the same nice houses like them, can now speak uh, English as good as them, or maybe sometimes even better than them, can now be now be some even do better than them in education now. I think these are all small reasons that could have added to their frustrations, and that led to it blew out of control. I mean, you combine all of that frustrations, and then you have one fascist fundamentalist like Biren Singh, then it was sure to blow up, whether there was a tribal rally or not on May 3, right?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah, we won't talk about Viren Singh today, but let's move on.
okay? Can you explain how the violence in Kangwai and Torbung actually started? I believe you have covered some of it, but if you can go into more details and tell our viewers how you came to these conclusions, or how you found out this information as well, so that if they need, they can also go through the same sources that you have cited, and they can use it in whatever way they can in case they need to use it.
Well, the maximum information on that day came from only two or three sources. Sangha Express, right? So Sangha Express did a report. It apparently had reporters in all the places where the conflict erupted, and those reporters filed their reports, and they were all combined together in the editorial newsroom, I would expect. So, despite the fact that the headline say that the violence had the rally had turned violent, that is what the headline said. That would have been manufactured in the editorial newsroom. The reports, individual reports that they published, did not show that. I mean, the Chirachandpur report from of Sangha Express also says that the rally ended peacefully, and then it turned ugly after a fire was started at the Anglo-Kuki War Memorial Gate. So the Sangha Express reporters were clear. One other news source that did very excellent reporting was Borderlands, which is another news website based in Guwahati. They cover all the border areas.
How did they manage to be there on 3rd May?
They weren't there. They were getting information from the web, from the social media, and maybe they had contacts whom they called. Right. So these are, I mean, news websites are mostly run from their base. They don't have reporters, ground reporters all over the place.
Okay.
Even newspapers these days don't seem to have ground reporters all over the place. So they sit at their desk and make phone calls. They have contacts and they make phone calls. So that's how news is produced these days. So those were the two main sources. One other useful source was India Today, which did a report on maybe 6th May or something. So they tried to, talk to both the Meitei side and the Kuki side
India
and
Today,
get
not
their
is.
versions. No, Real India Today. And it was, the report was written by a young editor who had, who had good education abroad, right? So it was a very, very well done report. So that was actually the first article I read, right? So I didn't follow the conflict as it was happening. I was watching some tweets, but that's about it. But when I got into when I started looking at the conflict, which was towards the end of May, the first report I read was this India Today one. So these were the main sources. The newspapers, mainstream newspapers, practically said nothing, and they weren't there. Um, very few of them have reporters from Manipur, and even if they did, those reporters were based in Imphal. And so they knew practically nothing about what was happening in the hill districts or even Bishnupur. They were mainly publishing PTI newswires, either verbatim published or they used those as the basis for writing up their own story.
And PTI was fed by the Manipur police, right?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So PTI, I mentioned there was this 4 p.m. Report which said that there was no violence during the rally, but a report later in the day, later in the night, let's say maybe 9 or 10 p.m., it contradicted that by reproducing what the police said. So police told them that when the rally went through Torbung and Kangwai, then there were frictions between the Meiteis and Kukis, between the rallyists and non-tribal population. So that is what most Indian newspapers published the next day.
So they got caught, I
So
guess.
the story was doctored. The story was doctored by Manipur police through PTI. And many newspaper journalists actually believed it. There was, an interview of Indian Express editor about a month later, where the editor was asked, like, can you explain what happened? He was still saying the same thing, that when the rally went to Torbung and Kangwai, there were clashes with the local people. So
But
misinformation was
there was no rally in Torbung and Kangwai. The rally was in the district headquarters.
Tirachandpur.
Yes, in
That's
the
right.
town.
Yeah. So what else happened at Torbung and Kangwai, we do not know very much because, this is one of the things that I find very disappointing, that Cookies did not talk about it. In the first place, there were very few eyewitnesses because, people who resided there, they fled when the mobs came. So I talked to one village chief in the area, and he said that, even if it was a cookie mob, they wouldn't know which was a cookie house and which was Meitei house. So we might get attacked as well. So we all, feared for the safety of our families, women and children. So they took them all away. And only later, the men were asked to come back to defend the village. Now, this chief also told me that the next morning, on 4th, mobs came in trucks to attack Kangwai.
Yeah, we have videos of Meiteis in a Shaktiman truck and the mothers waving goodbye to their sons as if they are going to fight for the country. I don't know, some nonsense. The drama was going on, and those videos, they even recorded it themselves, made it viral on social media, and we have those videos. So they can't lie about that.
Yeah, so apparently people in Kangwai, so that is the more interesting part. So people in Kangwai, tried to find out how they can defend themselves. and they gathered all the weapons they had, and they found that they had 7 guns and 13 bullets.
Yeah, those
That's
would be
all they had.
hunting. Those would be hunting guns, right?
Yeah. And there were also reports that the Manipur police had asked them to deposit guns sometime earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know when or why. So many of them who had guns also had already lost them, so to speak. So they were unarmed.
It was
So I
deposited.
think during the first week, the cookies were just using these weapons that they had, and it was only after that that the village volunteers were organized, and they were armed with more sophisticated weapons later. Now, on the Meitei side, there are reliable reports that say that during that night itself, on third night, they had raided the first police armory, and stole the weapons.
So their
And
excuse
fourth,
that because cookies have guns, we looted the armory is now proven dismantled by the fact that they looted the armories on 3rd May itself when maximum deaths were cookies, when cookies had not even touched them, and when cookies were actually defenseless on 3rd May. And if they
yeah,
can start looting on 3rd May itself, then it points to some level of pre-planning must have been there, that in case anything happens, then these are the armories that we have to go and collect the guns from. I wouldn't even say looting, because even though we use the word looting, there was no looting actually that happened. It was people went there, they were given guns. The
yeah.
Meiteis
I
went
mean,
there, I
there
mean to
there are
say, yeah.
various versions of what happened, but they didn't really stop the mobs,
Yes.
either intentionally or they didn't have the strength to stop them. But the important thing was that advanced weapons, which were normally used by police commandos, AK-47s and Insa's rifles, fell into the Meitei hands right on the first day. And on fourth morning, when they went to attack this village called Bifainom, which is where the naked parade incident happened.
Yeah.
So the news report said that the attackers came with AK-47s and Insa's rifles on fourth morning. But of course, that was only the first batch of looting arms, and they kept on looting them in the succeeding months until they had
6,000.
6,000 guns and 6 lakh bullets or something of that
Yeah.
kind. And some people even said that the police armories are now empty and the police themselves do not have arms to do anything.
Yes.
But on 4th May itself, right? So I said Kangwai people found they had 7 guns and 13 bullets. So using those, they were able to, defend themselves and drive back these mobs that came. And the mobs were pretty certain to be Arambai Tengol mobs. But the second thing that happened is that after those mobs went away, then Manipur police commandos came and they opened fire randomly at anybody they found.
What do you mean to say they shooting at Meiteis as well?
No, Meiteis had gone back, and it was only cookies who were trying to defend their homes. Only the men, they had evacuated the families. So apparently the village chief said that from each house, at least one man should stay back and one male should stay back and defend the village. So they opened fire on
On the men who had.
on the men, who were trying to defend. So this shows that they were working in tandem. Arambai Tengol and Meitei police commandos were working in tandem on the very second day of the violence.
So some level of understanding was there between the Meitei commandos and the Arambai Tengols.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How many people actually died in Kangwai on the first day and in the on the second first week? Let's say in general, on the first week, how many people died?
I mentioned that earlier. So, on the first, according to Reuters, which gave the week totals, let me pull up the numbers again. Um, 77 cookies were killed compared to 10 Meiteis at the end of the first week of violence.
Okay. Now, let's let's continue to Imphal. I think it's a bit messy the way we are discussing, but even though we try to keep it question specific, once the discussion touches certain topics, then it is impossible to isolate it out. We need to discuss about Imphal now. So, explain to our viewers how the violence started in Imphal. I know you have already covered that topic a bit, but if you could slightly go into more detail, like how the violence started in Imphal, uh, what else happened there. I believe there are videos, a lot of videos from Imphal actually, very in fact scary to an extent. I saw one video where there was one cookie man lying on the road with his leg was tied to some kind of a rock or something, and he was uh, struggling. And then I saw people kicking him, and it was later discovered that his wife was a Meitei. Imagine that. That cookie man who they killed on the road by who was killed on the road by Meiteis. They didn't even kill him like mercifully, like let's say you put a knife to my throat or to my heart and I instantly die and there's no pain. They let him struggle for hours. Okay, they tortured him, tied his leg to a piece of rock, and the rock itself is not that light that he can just drag it. Anyway, he was already badly beaten, so he can't even stand
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, you may be mixing several incidents, but here is the important one. So the Forgotten Frontier has done videos on the first couple of days of violence, so 3rd May and 4th May. So you can watch those.
Okay.
So this incident, which came out on social media early in the morning on 4th May, was 3 people lying on the road.
Okay.
Um, and I have geolocated that location to Singjamei, the road that goes to Moray.
Hmm.
And it is the constituency of the present chief minister, Kim Chen Sing. So 3 people, out of whom one survived, and he's the one who had his legs tied with a rock. Um, So he lifted his head during that 30-second video twice or thrice. And another person who was also lying also had his arm moving. So there were 2 people alive at the time when the video was taken. But they were all presumed to have died and sent to the morgue. But the one who had the rock tied, he was alive and he was rescued by some staffer in the morgue. And he was treated and he was sent back to Churachandpur about a few weeks later. And he
Okay.
had severe fractures all over the head. They said his head was beaten with a bat or something of that kind. Um, and his jaw was broken. They had to, fix it with sutures. And he had lost several teeth. Um, and he was in bad shape, right? And so that was the incident that you mentioned.
Okay.
But none of these were covered in the press. I mean, later, some Indian media sent their reporters to investigate some of these cases. So we only know a handful of these cases. Um, but at that time, on 3rd, 4th, and 5th May, The only news we got was about what the government was supposedly doing. And those were reports of, central forces being flown into Imphal, shoot at site order issued by the governor of Manipur. Um, and there was, a report that Article 355 had been invoked by the center, and that apparently meant that the Director General of Police was asked to stand aside, P. Dongo. Um, and a new DGP was appointed from Tripura or some other state, if I remember.
I think
And also
he
the
still is
center
the
had
current
appointed,
DGP in Manipur.
yeah, and the center had appointed a security advisor to the chief minister, Kuldeep Singh. Um, so these were the things that were covered in the newspapers on those 3 days. And in fact, many newspapers put out several stories each day. In the same newspaper, there were 3 or 4 stories about Manipur because it was a big event. But all the news that were published was about what the government was doing. So it was intended to give the impression that things were under control, the government was acting promptly, and things of that kind. Um, Practically nothing about what was happening on the ground in Imphal was published on those 3 days. It was only after, many cookies who fled to these army camps, um, they tried to fly out of Imphal if they could afford, flights. Um, and it's only after they flew to some of the other state capitals, Calcutta or
Yes.
Delhi or Bangalore or wherever they went. It's only when journalists went and talked to them that we started finding out what had happened. Even cookies themselves probably did not know, right? And so if we can move ahead and talk about what happened in Churachandpur in the following days. So on fourth morning, John Swante, who is a Churachandpur-based journalist, tweeted at like 7 a.m. saying that Meitei houses in New Lanka were getting emptied out because the state government has made arrangements to evacuate them. And a few hours later, we had a new video report from East Mojo reporter who said that while they were being evacuated, there were also cookie mobs that had gathered. And cookie women formed a human chain to protect the people who were being evacuated.
The mobs
Um,
wanted a deal. Give us our people in return for your people. That was the basic. See, Biren.
Not on 4th May, not on 4th May. I'll come to that. Okay, on
Okay.
4th May, these people were being evacuated, and cookie mobs had by then quietened down. Okay, Assam Rifles was mobilized during the night, and by 1 or 2 a.m., the mobs had been dispersed. Right, so there was no more violence in Churachandpur after that. Um, so on 4th morning, these mobs were not really trying to do anything. They were just trying to make a racket, threaten people, bully people, etc. But even that, the cookie women did not allow them to do. So these people who were evacuated were first taken to some shelter, temporary shelter. And in Churachandpur, that shelter was the DC's office, mini secretariat. And in Imphal, people were sheltered in various Army and Manipur Rifles camps, which were apparently there throughout the city. So that was the first stop. And then later on, they were evacuated from there to, the valley side or the hillside. Well, the Meiteis were evacuated first. And the people who did not get evacuated, they just walked away on their own, right? If they wanted to leave, they just walked away on Tedim Road. And we saw videos of that, and nobody harmed them. So the important point is that cookies were not trying to
Kill.
harm the Meiteis, right? So they were angry, they burnt houses, but that's about it. In contrast, Meiteis, tried to kill anybody that fell into their hands and rape any woman that fell into their hands.
Yes.
So that genocidal instinct was there from only one side, right? That is what I gathered. Um, okay, where do we go from here? So, okay, that was the fourth morning. And I think fifth night is when cookies came to the conclusion that Meiteis were getting evacuated, but cookies from the valley were not getting evacuated. So then they blocked the evacuation on fifth night. And then the army opened fire, and actually two people died. One person was injured and he was rescued later. And one of them was this nurse that you mentioned in the previous broadcast, right?
Yeah.
I cannot remember her name, unfortunately.
I
Uh,
also forgot. I know it's a Simte lady.
so it is after that that the cookies were evacuated from the valley and sent to the hills, right? So until then, it was only Meiteis that the government was trying to rescue, not the cookies. Even though cookies were in higher danger, the government was only caring about Meiteis.
Yeah.
So that's what the government did. And in fact, while I said that the Assam Rifles brought order to Churachandpur on the first night, in Imphal, nobody brought order. In Imphal, the violence continued throughout the third night and into the day on fourth. And it's only after all the cookies had escaped that the killing stopped. And even afterwards, whichever cookies were still left behind, they were hunted down.
Yeah.
So that's how Olivia and Florence were killed. They were working in this car wash place where apparently all their co-workers were helpful. But Arambai Tengol went hunting for them. They heard that these girls were working, and they went hunting for them, and they found them and raped them and killed them. And Nengting Ling, the lady who died recently, she was hiding in a Meitei Pango friend's house. And then she went to an ATM to get money in order to pay for a taxi. And that's when she was caught, and then she was raped. And she mentions that she was asked, how come you're still hanging around in Imphal? So there was, very direct implication that cookies were not allowed in Imphal anymore. Right? So cookies were driven out. So this is something that the PUCL report mentioned. Cookies were driven out of the valley, and the Meiteis left the hills. And all the Meiteis complained, how come one were driven out and the other just left?
Because it's the
And
truth.
that is in fact the reality.
Yeah. That is actually what happened. They were not
Yeah.
killed. They were not raped. They were not butchered. There was nobody lying on the streets of Lamka with their legs tied to a piece of rock. These people are so inhumane that they have lost all their humanity. And even after all these incidents, how do we even expect to go back and live together with them again? I have no idea. And it is very sad that people who are from outside the state, they call it an ethnic conflict, which is actually not an ethnic conflict, an ethnic cleansing with active participation of the government, the state government, and also patronage of the political leadership in the state. And the other very important uh, point that we forget all the time is the rise of fascism in Meitei society. That actually contributes to all of this. So we'll go to part three now. We'll take a 5 minute break, and we'll resume part three after this. Very well, Professor. I'll see you again in 5-10 minutes.
Okay.